Hi friends, this video is for anyone who wants to effectively use AI to solve highly complex tasks. It involves a lot of lessons learned in the software development space in an area called context engineering. However, I think a lot of the lessons really just boil down to the basic good old communication skills. So let's get started. The first important point is that large language models have what is known as a context window. A context window is how much information the large language model can process and remember at one time. It is measured in tokens, which from a naive point of view could be thought of as words. So as I'm having this conversation with the model, it is consuming tokens, which are going into this length. Just because I may type a simple message, every single word, every single letter is something that is going into that context. It is remembering the entirety of this conversation. If I start dumping, for instance, like a whole entire document or book into the conversation, if I'm doing it exactly word for word, that's all information that it has to keep until it hits that context limit. Once it's hit its context limit, it can't process any more information. Model providers actually have a means of correcting this through something called compaction, which means that they can take your existing conversation length, and when they know that it's getting to a certain limit, they have mechanisms to reduce the size of the conversation. It's not a lossless compression, though. If there's key details, maybe they'll be elided. The next important point is that the large language model's performance is not uniform throughout the context window. The early phases of the conversation, when there's not a lot of data, are characterized by a high degree of attention and ability to follow instructions, what's generally considered to be good performance. Anecdotally, around 40% through that context window, the model now has a lot more data and it starts to lose focus through a phenomenon called context rot. This just gets worse the more that goes on over time. There's a trajectory to the conversation. If you've asked the model to fix a problem and it fixed it in a bad way, and then you asked it to fix it again and it fixed it back to the original thing, you've created a loop, and that's all going to be remembered. Even if you were to compact the conversation, it still will probably not be a good trajectory from there on out. It's almost as if it's been poisoned by this incorrect logic. Typically, the best thing if you want to get better results is just to start fresh with a new conversation every time. We can be strategic about when we continue a conversation and when we choose to restart it. Perhaps we've gotten to a point where we know we've been talking for a long time, but we have some reasonable direction and we want to continue. We can do something called intentional compaction, where we ask the model to provide a summary and it will summarize the conversation. We can look at that output and maybe make any tweaks we want to. And then we feed that into a new conversation and continue from there. That is one way that we can be efficient about using context, especially if we're planning a long running plan. We can spend time in a conversation just developing a plan document that we will then use in later conversations and can even track the status of phase one, phase two, and know when certain parts of that long running plan are complete. That's one way we can minimize the amount of tokens that the model has to keep in its context at any one time. So now we know the words in our conversation with AI are a finite resource, and we should be efficient in our use of that resource. We should be effective with our words. That said, here's some practical advice. The first one is, if you make a mistake when you're conversing with AI, don't fix forward in the conversation. Every model has the ability to edit a message and replay it. And that's what you should be doing if you made a mistake or if the model produced output you didn't like. Edit the message and start the conversation from there. That will remove those tokens and you won't be burning any context or creating doom loops that will needlessly draw the model's attention in the wrong direction. The next advice is, don't use please and thank you and other filler words. Keep the conversation focused on the outcome you're trying to achieve, the problem and the goal, and everything else is extraneous. Break big conversations down into smaller conversations. If you know that you're going to have a long running plan, the first conversation you have should just be writing a plan document You can use that same document in a sequence of follow on conversations where you tackle each small part of that big plan individually. And that will keep the model focused on just what it needs to achieve that step of the plan. There's a lot more I could say about context engineering, but I'm going to wrap it up here today and hope this has been a helpful video. If you have any questions or if you need help automating in your small business or firm, please reach out. I'm here to help. Thank you.